There's an unfortunate game of ping pong underway right now between the U.S. Supreme Court and lower courts as it relates to the state of Texas's ability to enforce the law as it relates to the southern border. What Texas has said is that Texas has a right and a responsibility to defend itself and the citizens of its own states by saying that if you are an illegal in this country, you'll be returned to Mexico if you cross that border illegally, especially if you're also breaking the law while you're here. That's simple. It's consistent with federal law, and it's consistent with Texas's own law and obligations to its own citizens. Now, the fact that that's controversial and the fact that you now have a lower court that's pushing back on that argument after the U.S. Supreme Court said that Texas actually did have the latitude to enforce this law reveals the lie of the Biden administration and Mayorkas's Department of Homeland Security and its actual two-faced behavior here. Texas has done a good job of smoking it out. Because if you think about the argument, here it is. On one hand, the federal government is saying that Texas can't enforce the law because it's enforcing a different law that's inconsistent with federal law. Yet on the other hand, they're saying that the federal law is indeed to secure the border and to actually prevent illegal migration to this country. You can't have it both ways. You see, either Texas's law is inconsistent with federal policy, where Texas says that you can't enter this country illegally, and if that's inconsistent with federal policy, that reveals the lie that we know to be true, the Biden administration and Mayorkas's effective policy of open borders. Or Texas's law is exactly just restating what the federal law is, in which case there's no constitutional or legal issue. You cannot have it both ways. And the fact that they're trying to talk out of both sides of their mouth, on one hand saying that the federal government has a secured border policy, that you can't enter this country illegally, but on the other hand will say that Texas is being inconsistent with the federal law because Texas is literally enforcing the law accordingly, reveals the hypocrisy and lies of not just this administration, but more broadly, Democrat policy that has favored illegal mass migration into this country. What's behind it? Incentives. Incentives all the way down. Let's be really clear. What are they doing? They're importing what they view as long-run voters and preventing the export of those same voters in the form of deportations. That's what this is really about. Go back 10 years, you hear the Democratic Party saying the same thing. This is about securing lasting electoral majorities for the Democratic Party. And it's no accident that the very people who favor those porous southern border policies are also the ones who favor lax standards for voting in our elections. That's what this game is really about. Once you see that, the rest of it makes sense. If you think about it as a technical issue, why can't we solve this technical issue at the southern border with a fence or a wall or drones or other technology? You're missing the point. Of course we can solve the technical problem. This isn't a technical issue, it's a challenge of will. And I think Texas has done an outstanding job of smoking that out, that fact out, by forcing the federal government to admit that Texas's law is inconsistent with the way the federal government's enforcing the law today. On the other hand, if they're not doing that, then the Texas law should be perfectly good to be enforced as it is. And it's sad that we live in a state of affairs where states have to take up a responsibility that should have been fulfilled by the federal government. I'm a small government person at the federal level. But at the very least, if the federal government is supposed to do one thing, it is to protect our own homeland and our territory in the United States of America. And the fact that they're failing to do that today reveals how far we've fallen as a nation. A nation without borders is not a nation. And right now, that's what we're at risk of becoming unless we set this right.